Hey, if you're enjoying this show, you should check out Book It In, Guardian Australia's weekly books and culture podcast. Join me, Jane Lee, and my co-hosts as we take a closer look at the big ideas behind some of our favourite books, in conversation with authors like this year's Miles Franklin winner Jennifer Down and Stella Prize winner Evelyn Araluen.
You know, we are colonised through literature, and our resistance to that, I think, has a capacity to be literary. We are not in a post-colonial society in Australia. The invaders are still here. They've never left.
Listen and subscribe to Book It In on your favourite podcast player.
Oh, my God. I can't believe it. I'm a father! I did it! My boys can swim! I can do it!
Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton, and my boys can swim.
Your boys can swim.
That's it.
Your boys can swim, Ashto. Congrats, mate. My name's Adam Jones. Haven't really tested the boys out yet, but I'm hoping they're good swimmers.
That's right.
Because eventually everyone swims to the promised land one day and meets that final egg and then comes out out of a mother, and then you enter this earth.
That's right.
So this book's What to Expect When You're Expecting, Ashto. Who's the author of it?
That's right. Heidi Murkoff, I think.
Hides.
A lot of people have kids. Not everybody has kids. Not everybody wants to have kids. Not everybody can have kids. But if you're not thinking about having kids anytime soon, this app's probably not for you. But if you are thinking about having kids at some point in the future, this is probably a must-read.
Well, it's super relevant for a good majority of people at a very specific time in their life.
That's right.
So
that's
whether
right.
you want to just skip now and go to a different app, that's fine. And just remember it's here and come back to it.
Yeah.
Or listen to it now and sort of have some pretty cool ideas in the back of your mind.
I suppose the first things first is, are you pregnant? That's how the book starts off, is, maybe you're this didn't happen to me personally, but maybe your period's a day overdue, maybe it's 3 weeks overdue, maybe you're not even due yet, but you just got this this feeling in your gut, literally, that something is cooking in there. And you might just feel like maybe it's happened.
A baby brewing in the oven. How did it happen for you, Ashto? Like, how'd you...
I'd say there was probably 4 cycles. Which is, I think, for like monthly having a crack at it until it happened.
Oh, sorry, yeah. And then when it actually happened, like, missed her period, and then
I think it was she was just a big tester. Just loved doing the piss on a stick,
pissing on the stick technique.
And one day the extra line popped up, or whatever's meant to happen. But generally, that's kind of the there's a few early signs. They say urinary frequency increases, maybe a little bit of nausea, maybe a bit of smell sensitivity, something just random might set you off. Rising body temperature, obviously missed period is probably a pretty good sign. I think some of these things are pretty subjective, and sometimes if you pay too much attention to these signs and these tests and things, you could make assumptions that aren't true and can make things worse. But I think if you realise, what's a urinary frequency? If you, I pissed a couple of times extra today.
Oh, if I was a female, I'd feel like I'd be pregnant all the time.
You're a big, high urinary frequency.
I'm a high UFT man, So the home pregnancy test, it's easy as 1-2p, and you can do it in the privacy and the comfort of your own bathroom. And these tests are pretty quick. They're pretty accurate. And you can start pretty early, and they promise about 60 to 75% accuracy. So pretty good there, Ashto, 4 to 5 days before your expected period.
That's right. And then if you wait an extra week and you wait until around when your period is expected to hit, they reckon it's 98% plus chance of being correct, which is pretty high.
That's huge, man. It's pretty impressive technology. Compared to what
very.
Back in the day, you just...
I feel like that's better than COVID rat tests were, that's for sure, yeah? That's right, super
mate.
high.
Yeah, it's much
and if
better.
you want to go even higher, you can go a blood test, and that's going to give you almost 100% certainty. But you probably don't want to get a blood test every single month just to test it out. You probably start with the piss on a stick and then later on get the blood test to confirm it.
That's it. So for some people, the home pregnancy test at the very start before the period is positive, but a few days later they take another and it's a negative, and you think, what the hell is going on? And then you get your period. So unfortunately, it sounds what you've gone through is actually a chemical pregnancy. And this happens a lot, doesn't it?
Surprisingly, yeah. So this is when the egg is fertilized, but for whatever reason, it doesn't complete its implantation. So there are whatever hormones are triggered because the egg gets fertilized, and when you do your wee on the stick, it says, yep, there's a fertilized egg in here. But then a couple of days later, it might realize that, okay, it didn't actually land where it's meant to land, and that's kind of it. And experts say that up to 70% of all conceptions are these chemical ones. So 70% of the time, you wouldn't even notice. The egg gets fertilized. A couple of days later, it doesn't make it to its destination, and that's it. And so really, that's a hell of a lot. But most of the time, you're never going to realize that happens.
Yeah, it's never really considered technically pregnancy loss, is it? Because it's very different, because most of the time you don't even know what happened. But let's say he goes bang. Ashto, Alison, she waves the magic stick at you, and what do? You got pretty excited.
I was pretty nonchalant.
Yeah, I can imagine that. It wouldn't have even hit home. You probably would have smiled and tried to.
I was
it's only hitting you now a bit, obviously.
Yeah. For me, it definitely took a while to land, and then, which is probably the worst possible reaction when Alison was expecting fireworks, and I was just, oh, that's pretty cool.
Oh God, I can so imagine that. But then you do it. You make your first appointment, and good prenatal care is one of the most important ingredients to making a healthy baby, apparently. So yeah, don't delay. As soon as you get the result, get straight to the practitioner, schedule the appointment, and get moving.
That's right. I suppose to you, especially as a first timer, it's like the biggest thing that's ever happened. To the doc, they're probably like, oh yeah, I'll see 3 of these every day. But so it's probably not as exciting for them. But it's still pretty exciting. Generally in that first visit, say you've done your wee test, they'll probably book you in to do the blood test to confirm everything. They'll kind of give you the general do's and don'ts. There's a bunch of things you're not sort of supposed to eat. There's a bunch of things you probably should do. They'll order a whole bunch of other tests for you to do. They'll give you a bit of an outline saying, in this week you should be doing this, in this week you should be doing this. And generally they'll say, okay, well, we'll try and do a bit of math here and work out if this is when your last period was, and this is probably when it happened, and then this is probably when it's due. And it's normally around 40 weeks of cooking in there, somewhere between 37 and 41, but they'll give you that rough date of about a 40-week pregnancy.
Yeah, nice one. It'd be very interesting being a doctor, and they're all excited. And I was speaking to a midwife a few weeks ago, same thing for them. They do it 3 times a day. But there's so much emotion on the other end, and they're just nonchalant when they've done 50 of them.
That's right.
But for the medical practitioner, you might want to be looking at one that matches with what you want. So are they a good listener? Are they equally responsive to both you and the partner? Is a sense of humour a bit important for you? A bit of fun, a bit of lightness? Can they listen to your emotional concerns as well as your physical ones? So just get a sort of feel out if they're pretty good or if they're an absolute dud you need to move on from.
Yeah, that's right. For our obstetrician, I read this book after testing her out, but I suppose we intuitively tested her out a little bit because you want to find one that kind of works. They're going to be there in the most stressful part of your life.
How often? What's the?
Well, this probably ties into one of these ones. Alison sees them at the moment every 4 weeks, and then every 2 weeks, and then eventually every week.
Oh,
so
wow! Really?
You see them a hell of a lot. But then their rule is because of COVID. Apparently, I'm not allowed to go to the appointments.
Even now?
Exactly. What? That was years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But so I reckon that's a bit of a sneaky one, and then it's probably just easier.
Dads are probably just a pain. They're probably just useless in the room anyway.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably the bigger reason.
I'd say so. But then there's also other things you want to work out. If you want to do a water birth, what are their views on that? What are their views on breastfeeding versus formula feeding? What are their views on induction of labour? What are their views on all these different types of routine testing that you want to do? Do they take your emotional concerns as seriously as the physical ones? It's almost like a reverse job interview. It's obviously going to be pretty hard to find one that you like. We found a whole bunch that we didn't like. A whole bunch of duds. There was probably 2 duds before we landed on the winner.
Yeah. So the whole process really is once you get going, you got something in the oven. You say, hey, there's something cooking in there. And then from there, it's a bunch of tests. And one of the first ones is your first ultrasound around 7 to 8 week mark. And you can have the option of an internal ultrasound. And I can imagine this would be pretty weird, Ashto. You got a little worm basically just squiggling around there.
Yeah.
Is it looking more like a sperm or a human at this stage?
It's very much looking like an enlarged sperm, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Just like a little bulb and a little
Big
tail
shot.
on it. that's kind of, I think it was like 8 millimeters or something at that point.
Wow. Oh, Jesus.
And
so small, man.
And it had at that point it's got the little heartbeat, so the little worm's just like pulsing. So it's a very strange one. So you kind of find out probably, 2 weeks after conception when your period's due, I guess, is when you find out. And then a month or so after that is when you go for this little worm test and you see the little heartbeat and they measure and they say, yep, cool, it's definitely there. Everything's in the right spot. There's not a whole bunch they can do really at that point other than see that it's there. And the next one you've got is an NIPT, non-invasive prenatal screening, which is basically a blood test. There's a whole bunch of things you can find out there. You can find out a bunch of potential risks or abnormalities, a bunch of like chromosomal type diseases like, Down syndrome or things like that, I think there's 3 major ones that they kind of test for. And then at that point, if you want, you can also find out if it's a boy or a girl.
Now, 10 to 13 weeks is the ultrasound. So the NT scan, the neutral translucency screening test, lets you know the risk even further that they might have. Then the next level of ultrasound is 10 weeks after that. So the level 2 ultrasound, we're 18 to 22 weeks. The thing's been cooking a bit longer. You're no longer a little worm.
That's right.
You're, what size are you now, Ashto?
I think you're probably around almost like eggplant size at that point,
wow.
Which is pretty large.
It's probably, 1,000x at least?
I'd say almost much more.
Million
yeah.
X? Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, so basically that first one, that sort of 13-week scan is normally the big one that most people sort of wait for before telling people. That's kind of the end of your first trimester, and that's when the risks beyond that point of things not going the way you planned generally drop significantly, which is a good thing. And then obviously that level 2 ultrasound around the 20 weeks, that's when they test all the physical stuff. So they look, does it have 2 arms, 2 legs? Has it got 2 heads? Oh no, 1 head. And they can even, it's kind of crazy from that point. They can see like the 4 chambers of the heart. They can see the blood flowing through different areas. They can see the kidneys. They can see the liver. They can see all sorts of stuff that is just bizarre on something so small. And inside of you, you can see it all happening.
So obviously, as the time goes on, you can have 100% certainty after 18 to 22 weeks on the baby's gender. I'm guessing right now you're going to see a little willy flopping around or a little vagina.
That's right. You either see something flapping in the breeze or nothing flapping in the breeze, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference there to figure it out. But then you can figure out what the sex is and then throw the gender reveal party.
That's right. If you want, a lot of people keep it a surprise as well until it pops out, and then you find out on that day. One final sort of optional type of testing is like genetic screening. You might worry if you think back to high school biology, where you've got the Punnett squares and you've got the dominant and recessive genes, and you kind of want to think, does it have blue eyes or brown eyes? It's probably more like, okay, is it a chance of getting this potential disease? So think about it, there's like 300 potential diseases that these tests can test for, and it's obviously only if both parents carry this as a recessive gene, then there's kind of like a 25% chance that that's the one that pops out. So mate, we did this test, and we found out there was nothing the same, like no crossovers, so we're kind of in the clear. But Alison had 4 things. I had 2 things. I don't know if this is stuff. I don't even know what this is. Alison was a carrier of 21 hydroxylase deficient congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Jesus.
I was a carrier of WNT10A related.
Jesus. Your one sounds much worse than Alison's.
And then it was kind of weird because then we, like, through this, you pay for the test and then you have like a consult at the end. And then it was like a half-hour thing, and the woman was like, okay, so do you want to talk about these? And she kind of explained each one. And she's like, do you have any questions? And we're like, well, not really. Like, we'd have questions if there was like crossover, but I don't care what WNT10A is if I don't have it and the kid's not going to have it.
She just tell you what it means, or she just sort of just say...
just told, almost like she wanted us to ask more questions, but we're like, well, we don't have it and the kid's not going to have it, so...
Just move on.
It was one of the quickest appointments she's ever had, I reckon.
Jeez, cash in the bank for her.
That's right.
All right. So up until this point, you've had it brewing. You got the initial details. You're speaking to the practitioners, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the things to sort of just make sure that the cooking period is as successful as possible, because that oven needs to be, you could say, optimally fine tuned for what the cooking of the steak is.
That's right.
Lasagna.
The bun.
The bun. That's better.
There's a few, obviously, sort of risk profiles, that may increase risks of certain things. For example, one they say in the book is obesity, in that most overweight mums, it's going to be completely safe pregnancies and completely healthy babies, but having a whole bunch of extra weight does increase the possibilities of certain complications like miscarriage, birth defects, stillbirth, preterm birth, high blood pressure, gestational diabetes. And then there's also kind of just the physical things of if you're very large and then you get pregnant and you become even larger, it's just going to be very uncomfortable. It's kind of like there's going to be all those potential things for you, like extra backache, varicose veins, swelling, heartburn, all these types of things. But kind of once you're pregnant, there's not a whole bunch you can do. In fact, you've got to eat more during pregnancy, because you not only have to feed yourself, you need to feed this thing that's growing at 1,000,000x or whatever we said. So you can't think, I'm pregnant now, so I'm going to lose weight. It just doesn't really work like that. You got to get to your optimal weight, and then once you're pregnant, it's kind of that's it.
That's it. And the other end of the spectrum's also potentially not ideal, or for the most part it's fine, but for some it's not ideal, and that's being too underweight. And if you're on the super skinny side, so say 18.5 BMI or less, you probably want to start filling up your plates a fair bit more, probably before you have the kid and during the pregnancy as well, because you want to be putting all that extra weight on top, so you've actually got a healthy weight for during the childbirth.
This book was basically written as a FAQ, Q&A style. Another question is, I was diagnosed with depression a few years ago. I've been on antidepressants ever since. Now that I'm pregnant, should I stop the meds? That's basically ask your doctor. Most of the time, it's completely fine. In fact, in almost all circumstances, it's completely fine. But of course, just ask a doctor on that one.
Yeah, another big question that pops up all the time is around about age. Obviously, I'd say not me, it is objectively the average age of having kids is increasing as we go forward, and people are focusing on their professional lives a bit more before kids, and it is a big growing cohort of the population who are having kids later and later.
And it's not a major issue either. It's, as you say, everyone's doing it. I think genetically, don't they say the peak is 16 years old or something, which is obviously not a thing that most people these days are doing. And it's not all downhill. It's not like once you turn 35, once you turn 40, or even once you turn 45, it's not saying it's all downhill. But there are increased risks. For example, one that they spell out is the risks of having Down syndrome. It's about 1 in 1,200 if you're 25 years old. It goes up a bit to 1 in 300 for 35-year-olds. It goes up to 1 in 35 for 45-year-olds. So it's not saying that, obviously, that's just all statistics and stuff. Also, the age of the father has a bit to do with that as well. And so it's just the risks increase the older you get.
And in addition, older mums are more likely to pop out twins, have an increased risk of miscarriage by a short amount. And the labour and delivery on average is going to be probably slightly longer and a little bit more complicated than it would be otherwise, with the need for a C-section much higher for older mums as well.
So that's kind of the risk profiles going into it, things you might need to think about. Then it's okay, well, what about your lifestyle during it? Can you disinfect the bathroom, or do you have to put the chemicals away? Can you have that pre-dinner cocktail, or does it have to wait until after the delivery? What about picking up dog turds or cleaning the cat litter? What about all these things? And she answers all of these in the book now.
Yeah, that's it. So firstly, working out. Actually, what she's saying is working out is not only a can-do, but it's something you should do. You should be going out there getting some pretty decent exercise as much as you possibly can, hey?
Yeah. You don't want to overdo it, but you kind of don't want to exercise until you drop and that it's so painful. You also don't want to just sit around and do nothing. I think you just want to keep fit and healthy. You're about to go through some pretty serious action in 8.5 months' time that you want to kind of keep your strength up.
That's it.
There's a funny Curb Your Enthusiasm episode about a woman on a treadmill who was pregnant, but that's
what happened?
It was just funny. She was fine. She was working really hard, and Larry David was like, "What the hell are you doing? You're putting some extreme, you're bouncing that thing up and down, but it was fine."
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, there's a lot. I think even in the ballet, there's still a lot of pregnant mums who are just still going pretty late. Like my uneducated brain thinks like the Curb Your Enthusiasm, there's a baby just jumping up and down, popping around and getting crushed against the walls and all that, but it just doesn't work like that, does it?
I think they're pretty well tucked in, I guess.
Pretty tucked in. Yeah.
Another question, I drink coffee, it keeps me going all day. Do I have to give up caffeine altogether while I'm pregnant? She says you don't have to hand in the card altogether, but you probably need to, if you're going too hard, you probably need to cut it back. She says, most evidence suggests that drinking up to about 200 milligrams of caffeine a day is perfectly safe. So basically you can have one coffee a day without issues. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of people that say, no, you shouldn't be doing it at all. There's probably plenty of people that do more than one a day and everything turns out fine. That's just what the stats say. Mate, I saw one ad pop up on Facebook, actually, a new report. Drinking caffeine during pregnancy can stunt your child's growth. I was like, I wanted a tall one. I think it's ours been on the one coffee a day. We could be in for a shorty, but I don't.
Little shorty, yeah.
I don't know how they did that study though. I just read the headline. I didn't read more than that.
I'm sure the caffeine industry will get out there and reverse that one. They'll do some new research.
New research funded by Nescafe has found that.
And I'll tell you what,
they become giants.
Yeah. I'll tell you which one will be more popular once it goes out. The people who like coffee will probably choose the one that Nescafe comes up with.
That's right. Another one is drinking. You know, someone said, "Oh, I've heard it's okay to have an occasional glass of wine with dinner when you're pregnant." Is that true? The author says there's no research to support that the occasional glass of alcohol is safe. So there's no research to say that it's safe. A whole bunch of people, the Surgeon General, the CDC, the ACOG, the AAP, don't know who they are, but they say that it's not safe and you shouldn't do it. I suppose it's personal preference. If it was me, I probably wouldn't be drinking, but I know a few friends that do. So there you go.
There you go. Smoking, you can imagine it's not a good one. And it isn't. I think back in the day, I think I always had a bit of fumes going around my my little tomb when I was getting cooked up. But I think it was pretty common back in the day. But these days, there's plenty of research to show it's just not good. When you do it, the actual fetus is confined in a smoke-filled womb. So somehow the smoke...
Is it a metaphorical smoke or actual smoke?
Yeah.
It just goes in and you just breathe in smoke.
It just stays in the gaseous form, even through the bloodstream, apparently.
But yeah, she says that there's no evidence that smoking before pregnancy is going to have any issues. But obviously during pregnancy, you'll probably want to cut that back if you can. In fact, cutting it all together. And that goes for the mums and the dads. Even if the dads say, oh, no, just smoke away, there's still all the things that come back with you. Even though the smoke's not there, you still get a few chemicals on the breath. If you're giving them a little smooch at night, you're probably sending a bit of cigarette toxins their way.
Mate, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm not a medical person, but I'll make the call. I reckon, don't you reckon vapes? You throw vapes in this category. Vapes are people just smoking vapes because the research just hasn't caught up to what ciggies has right now.
Right.
But it can't be good when someone quits and. Sorry, for Shane, he's not listening, but he's just constantly on a vape because he quit smoking, and it's just turned into 24/7 exercise now. It can't be good.
It can't be, can it? As you say, probably in 10 years we'll find out. Oh yeah, vapes are probably no good. Hey,
yeah, no, 100%. Next, man, we've got microwave meals, so U-Foods and whatnot, which I've got now. It's pretty convenient. Just get the microwave meal out. I reckon there's a bit of research coming on this to say it's pretty shit. But up until this point, microwave away, mum, she says. Yeah. It's fine. Microwaves are cool.
Yeah, she says you probably don't want to, putting Glad wrap on and heating it up and melting it to the point where then you're basically consuming Glad wrap. But if you've got like a microwave safe, BPA free container, you're probably fine on the microwave front. The other one they say is the family cat. There's toxoplasmosis. I remember hearing that on Joe Rogan about toxoplasmosis and all that stuff. And basically anyone who's got a cat's pretty much probably got it by now. So if you got a cat and you got toxo, well, that's it. You got it.
What actually is toxoplasmosis? Something that's not good?
I think it's like, so cats give it to mice, and then the mice, instead of normally they get repelled by the scent of cat piss, so they stay away from cats. They get sexually attracted to the smell of cat piss. So then they go towards the cat piss and then the cat eats them.
So what are you saying, when you got toxo, you like cat piss or something?
No.
What is it?
Then it crosses over to humans. I think it's like linked with like increased risk-taking behavior, and there's probably some just bad shit floating around in you, but not too bad that you're going to get eaten by a cat or anything like that.
Yeah.
Alison extended this one out. She said, I heard as well you're not meant to pick up dog poo. And I don't know I think that's horseshit. I don't know, but basically I've been picking up Charlie's turds for 6 months, and I've got another 3 months left before she did it well. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess
played. So. And then if that's when there's a baby out, she'll probably extend it as well.
Oh yeah, she's like, I got to recover, so you got to do another month. Oh, I'm still breastfeeding, so you got to do another couple of months, and then she'll extend it out, and then it'll be time for the next one, and then I'll have to do another 9 months, and I think I'm just picking up dog turds for the rest of my life now.
I think you've signed, sealed, and delivered. She also talks about eating, because not surprisingly, food is what goes into making the baby. It doesn't just come out of thin air. It's actually somehow the food translates into it. So eating excellent is really important, and improving the chances of a comfortable and healthy pregnancy.
There's probably, in terms of dieting stuff, it's kind of the obvious stuff that you should be doing for yourself anyway. Eat as much good stuff as you can, reduce all the bad stuff.
Pretty common sense, eh? So was that lean protein, calcium-rich foods, whole grains, fruit, veg, healthy fats,
Sounds pretty normal, yeah. She just says a few things, obviously. The leftovers, I know, is generally like you should kind of refrigerate as quickly as possible and then reheat it to make sure you kill anything that's brewing, and you probably eat it a day later. But if it's been sitting in the fridge for 4 days, you probably don't do that. If there's something frozen that's kind of was frozen, then it defrosted and then it refroze, probably stay away from that. There's a few things, a few rules they probably recommend as well. Raw eggs, don't eat runny eggs. Don't eat raw fish. If you're cooking steaks, cook it pretty well. Alfalfa is a bad one, like sprouts that can have bacteria and stuff. There's basically the risks there is around listeria, which I think the stats are like 8 people in Australia get it every year or something. So it's
close to zero.
Extremely, extremely low. But the thing is, if you do get it whilst pregnant, because your immune system's suppressed, it can be very bad for you and the baby. So she says there's a few things you could probably cut out. Deli meats, cold smoked fish, soft cheeses, unpasteurized milk, as I said, raw meat, raw eggs, raw fish, unwashed vegetables, that type of stuff are things that you should probably avoid whilst pregnant. Again, I know a few friends that thought, oh yeah, I'll get rid of the ham and then a few months later they're like, oh, it should be all right. But
you find that research again.
Yeah, that's
Ham's
right.
fine.
The ham industry
Who was that from?
put out a study.
From who makes ham?
Don.
Don's just hot dogs, just a pregnant lady smacking down a hot dog. Open up that research.
Yeah, again, it's probably a personal preference there, but again, the research says probably steer clear for a couple of months of that sort of stuff.
So the book's a beast, man. It's a huge one, isn't it? It's
a large book.
It's a large book. We've just scratched the surface, but probably a good one, right? Like I think just having that confidence and understanding of everything that's going on can only help and just make the whole thing less stressful.
That's right. We went through like the first 3 chapters. There's like 30 plus chapters. They go through month by month. What happens in the first month, what happens I think even week by week, they probably go through. This is what you can expect. This is the week where your nips get bigger and get sore and like all those types of things. And it's probably a good one to, if you're interested, to read week by week or month by month as you're going through it. It's a good one to get, as you say, just get a general understanding of. There's this one, what to expect when you're expecting. There's an Aussie one, Up the Duff, which Alison preferred. It's just, I don't know, there's just a hell of a lot of info. And it's probably just good to have a little bit stored in the back of the brain there for when the time comes.
That's it.